Okay, now I really am moralizing. Thou shalt. Okay, well, if you're going to do ethical philosophy, it's inevitable. Normativity. Normativity, what's that? Debris. Be straight about your sexuality. If you want to engage in a political act, be, first of all, absolutely straight with your own self about your sexuality, your sexual health, your sex life, your sexual satisfaction. What's the basis for me to say this? The basis is that if you have some idea now, at this point, there's hundreds of videos, you have some idea about what makes me tick, or anyway, what I'm like. And I go on about, singing my oh, I have no Oedipal training blues. Okay, well, let's take that as an assumption. I don't know what I don't know what to say about my Oedipal training, but my hypothesis is that there are exposures, repeated exposures, during the probably right around when language acquisition is really getting cranked up, I guess, 4 or 5 years old. I don't want to repeat my whole Oedipal thing, but you see mom and dad, and they do things, and they fight, and then but then they reconcile. They fight, they reconcile. So there's ordinary life happening every day inside the private house. So that's I have none of this. I have none of this because beyond my parents being split up, I was raised in a household that was essentially monastic. There were no men in my household. I mean, there were no fathers. Like I've mentioned, there were men, but there were women too, because my mother had lots of friends, so it's just left right there. In other words, I'm not ever exposed in my life to my own parents having a relationship with each other. Moreover, I'm not exposed in my household, growing up with my mother, to anything analogous. So even though Dale's advice to me about the surest way to a woman's heart is through conversation and through listening and paying attention. Now, this has turned out to be, at least as advice to tell an adolescent boy by his mother, it is not exactly operationalizable information. I tried it. I'm an empiricist in this, I'm an empiricist in the scientific sense. Like, experience is an experiment. It's a scientific experiment. So if you intend to learn from your experience, you have to keep track of what your experience is. thematically, really formally. You have to really define what, it's not you intuitively learn about the experience. No, I mean, formally, conceptually, you understand what it was, what mistake was that you made. That's learning from experience, I think. That's empirical science. There's not a lot that's actually broken. I mean, if you look out at society all over the world, looks a lot like life to me. So then what's our problem? Our problem is probably ideological or just simply logical. We just make logical mistakes. We don't keep track of the statements that we make, and then we don't hold our own selves to our statements, and we don't hold each other to each other's statements. So as long as there's no chance of really getting caught in a knockdown contradiction, then nobody has to make any attempt to learn or articulate their views or anything. It bolsters a kind of anxious pick up the pace, process in framing, gestell. To what end? To what end? Many people have satisfying sex lives. I think that probably it's probably the majority. You know, I look out there and I see plenty of couples that have sustained relationships. There's a lot of polyamory these days. Well, we're making adjustments. These are adjustments. And a lot of the adjustments are coming because they're fueled by openness, transparency about my sex life. Dear lover, I need to be transparent with you about my sexual response. I need to be transparent with you about my sexual appetites or my lack thereof. Or it's very difficult to talk about these things, even if you have no apprehension. Like, for instance, I have no apprehension about talking about all these horrible things. I mean, horrible. I mean, my semen or my blood or shitting blood or whatever. I mean, for example, okay, take the hemorrhoid thing. Now, you start shitting blood. So then you what? I've heard people WebMD that. I'm uninterested. No, I'm interested in paying attention to my body. Is what I'm interested in. And if I'm shitting blood, I want to go see my internist. So I go to Dr. Cherup, Peter Cherup, CHARAP, Cherup. But Dale's like, oh, cheer up. Like CHEER space UP. Anyway, so I explained this. I go in there. I didn't have an appointment. I just go in. I said, can I get you for 5 minutes? I said, listen, Dr. Cherup, hemorrhoids, like, just unimaginable. And it's quite puzzling. I've been proactive in a number of ways: diet, exercise, whatever, fiber. So he says, go in the other room and drop your pants. And then he proceeds to ram some kind of object, felt like a baseball bat, right up my ass. I think I've told this story. I'm losing track now myself. I mean, it's hundreds of videos. And so when I describe, go back to the before he shoved the baseball bat in my ass. I was explaining, like, you know, there's blood involved. Yeah, that happens. Okay. So that's why I went into this. Did our high school, at Irvine High School, did our health instructor, who was also the driver's ed instructor, some 65-year-old dude, was our health instructor, and the penis vagina class, that had to be directed by the nurse. She came in just for the penis vagina class because I guess the driver's ed instructor didn't know how to say penis and vagina. But besides penis and vagina, what about bursting hemorrhoids? Now, of course, this is not really a big problem for adolescents, but the point is that symbolizing difficult things. First of all, you have to get over the shame, just the exposure of it, the vulnerability, and etc. But then the diplomatic way of saying it without upsetting your interlocutor, because you're proposing to somebody at the same time you're sharing of yourself, you're also making an implicit suggestion that they be equally as forthcoming and transparent. And in the previous video, or even in this video, I am suggesting that you do precisely that. But I'm interested in you know, making clear that, you know, only a crazy philosopher like Diogenes will go to the steps of the Acropolis and proceed to masturbate and ejaculate and then say, have a nice day. Most contemporary philosophers, if you bring up Diogenes, they start blushing and they get, oh, yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, because Diogenes basically told Alexander to fuck off. I mean, this is the famous story. Alexander goes with his gang. Alexander goes with his gang and finds Diogenes. I repeat this story so often. And Diogenes says, hey, move aside. You're blocking my son. Yeah, fuck you, Alexander. Go fuck yourself. So, as philosophers, you know, we have the position we get to do things like this. What is the price that we pay for that? Well, our love life is pretty interesting and complicated. We're fucking solitary. Every single word out of her mouth is misunderstood. It's a monastic life. Yeah, even if I have sexual appetite and I fuck women and stuff. If you get rid of the moral aspect of, say, Christian mysticism, you know, all that Saint Hilarion and his mentor, this stuff is just suffering and self-flagellation and my filthy thoughts. Yeah, you're never going to get anywhere with expanding your mind if you're moralizing about your own filthy thoughts. It's not, the thoughts are not filthy. The problem now is finding a place within public discourse, not only for pornographic filth, which we can keep over there and we can keep it private. No, I mean, the real vulnerable human filth, the person to person, first person, second person, vis-a-vis filth. How do you talk about that in a way that isn't going to basically make one or the other person or both brains explode? It's a real question.